from being mesmerized by music at a young age. Sitting on my grandpa's lap as he sung me one of his favorite old songs. To growing up and actually getting to sing with a live band. Competing and even winning in some singing competitions and karaoke challenges.
My tears no longer weep. Oh, my resistance ain't that strong. But my mind keeps recreating back with you alone.
Our first place winner is Jason. Come on up, Jason.
As long as one heart still holds on, and hope is never really gone. And I hear them saying you'll never change things. And you say you'd be happy if you could just come back home. Well, here's a quarter, call someone who cares.
Even getting to perform the national anthem a few times.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
And then finally getting to realize my dream of actually being able to release a few singles.
Took that last breath slowly and went with the wind. Left behind all his pain, but he's smiling once again. I don't even know how the fight got started. All I really know is my head sure hurts. Well, I set out on the road trying to find myself. Nowhere bound, my freedom found, I'd put love on the shelf. My best friends were a two-lane road and a warm south wind. Hard fists and harder words that left me almost broken. I could feel the devil breathing down my neck as I searched for my way out. Then I heard your voice, and the chains broke around me. Got a smile on my face for the first time in forever. I know I'm not alone. Well, when she comes around and she's walking downtown, I swear you can hear the sound of my heart begin to pound. Try to look away and I don't know what to say, and I know I can't delay. Gotta make her mine someday. I try to go to work, but all I do is think of that girl.
Music's always been a part of my life, and this is our bonus episode for this month, and just wanted to show a few clips there. Definitely going to be talking about a few things. As you can see up there on the board, it's our music episode, my music roots I'm going to be talking about. Plus I'm going to go through some of my favorite 90s artists, and I'll get into that when I get to that. But growing up, there was always music on, I remember. and it was mostly country. But my grandpa and grandma listened to on my dad's side, Grandpa, Papa Wally, as I called him, and Grandma Lois, or Grandma Lotus, as I called her. They would listen to oldies and standard, older standards like that, and the Frank Sinatra my grandpa was into. Engelbert Humperdinck was was one that there's a funny story behind that. Like he has a bunch of hits. One of his ones that I found out later wasn't even his original song, but "Please Release Me" was like one of his big hits. Love that song. I found out Elvis did it too, which is kind of funny with the story. But Engelbert Humperdinck, just strange name. Like I was obsessed with him as like a little kid, so much so that like I didn't know who Elvis was at the time. Who's Elvis? I wanted what I wanted on to listen to. I don't know if my mom and dad got a tape or something, or it was a special. I think it was a special on TV. It's like an Elvis concert. This wasn't too long after he died. When I was younger. I mean, I was born after he died, obviously, but I had no interest in Elvis. I wanted my stuff, so my dad tricked me because they sort of look similar, and I'm a kid, so I don't know much the difference, and their voices, not exactly the same, but you could draw some parallels there. My dad's like, "It's Engelbert Humperdinck," and I sat there watching the whole thing so they could watch the Elvis special, so I didn't throw a fit. Anyway, that says more about me throwing a fit as a kid than anything. But yeah, I always grew up around music. One of my favorite artists of all time, who ended up having a pretty successful country career in the 80s, was Billy Joe Royal. He wasn't really a one-hit wonder from the 60s, but his biggest hit of all time was Down in the Boondocks. But he had some great songs that were also big hits, like Cherry Hill Park and I Knew You Win. And he did a bunch of songs, but he kind of fizzled out from popularity. And then, like I said, he came back in the 80s and had a pretty good run. He wasn't like one of the top country singers or anything, but still he had a pretty big run, which was pretty cool for me to see. And I think that was probably the reason, like, my grandma introduced me to his Down in the Boondocks. We had the record. I specifically remember it had a red label on it. I would play it constantly. I think it was like one of his greatest hits or something, so it had that and those other songs that I mentioned, and Tulsa and some other ones. But my grandma would call the oldies station. I wish I could remember the name of the station. WGYN, I think. WYGN. That sounds right. Could be wrong. And the Cincinnati oldies station. And she would always call and request Down in the Boondocks for me, like using my name. And they would say my name on the air, like my full name. And it was such a kick. I mean, I don't know if they still do requests and do names and stuff these days on the radio. I don't listen to the radio nowadays. But that was such a thrill back then. And there was always music on, like I said. I was introduced very early to Alabama, which is my all-time favorite band. Got to see them in concert. I wish Jeff would have been able to be there. Of course, Jeff Cook died a couple years ago, but he had Parkinson's disease, and by this time he wasn't able to perform with the band. They still did good. Randy Owen and Teddy Gentry, the lead singer and the bass player, they were all cousins, but still a great concert. But anyway, the My Home's in Alabama album, which came out in 1980, one of the very first CDs ever to come out. Obviously, it didn't come out in 1980, the CD. I mean, the album did. But my grandpa got the CD and wore that thing out. I ended up getting the original copy that I had as a kid, but it got too many scratches on it. I wish I had. I don't know what happened to the physical copy, because I wanted to keep that forever, but it got lost somewhere, sadly. I do have another copy of the album, but it's a different pressing of it, so it don't even look the same. Just if you know any of the CDs from the 80s, especially the early to mid 80s, RCA albums, the way they all looked, Even I think into the 90s, they kind of all looked uniform. That's the type of design that was on it. Anyway, that's not important. But just stuff you remember so much about music. I would do these videos. I would be playing guitar to Billy Joe Royal or really anything. Digging Up Bones was one of my favorite because Randy Travis. I can't talk about music without talking about him. He's on my 90s list, which I'll get into in a minute. But a little bit through, I love country music and, always loved it as a kid, and then just became I wouldn't say a historian where I can act like I know the ins and outs of everything, but just studying music and listening to music. We get the great artists came out in the 40s, but early 50s he was dominant into Hank Williams Sr. I mean, the all-time legend. His songs were just amazing. Such a tragic story though. Died at 29. There's conflicting reports of how he died, but that don't matter. It's just. But then you get more into the 50s. Obviously, later on, I fell in love with Elvis. I didn't even as an adult. I didn't really get. I was like, eh. Then I really started listening to his music. It's and I like all the versions of it. Even the later Elvis. I don't really like the Hawaiian stuff. Not really my type of music. But the 50s rock Elvis, can't beat that, and you can't beat the Suspicious Minds and that type of stuff too. Just like with Hank Williams, what could have been and could have continued. They're already talked about as the greatest of all time. Speaking of that, I want to mention someone else right now before we get into the 90s list. Is Keith Whitley. He had a few hits in the 90s, but they were all released after he died because he died in May of 1989, and that's another one of those ones that, it was his own fault that his life was cut short because of, his drinking and everything. So I'm not saying, other people are blamed, but it's just what could have been. I believe he would have been one of the top artists of the 90s because he was really hitting his peak. If you think about those songs he'd released, before he died, the When You Say Nothing at All, I'm No Stranger to the Rain, just all of those great songs. Don't Close Your Eyes. I knew I was forgetting a really big one there. But he released some in the 90s. But I didn't put him on the list because he wasn't, I guess it sounds cruel to say, but he wasn't alive. But I didn't put him on my list of 90s artists, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned him. But another one that I want to mention that is actually on the list. But anyway, I'll go back. I'm jumping out of order here. I was kind of going through the decades. Like I said, obviously wasn't alive in these decades, but in the 60s, you had these country legends that you always hear these two mentioned in the same breath, Merle Haggard and George Jones. Completely different sounds, but all country. George Jones, that voice, jeez. Merle Haggard, too, a great voice. A lot of times his songwriting, which isn't a bad thing, his songwriting gets more credit than he does for his, and his playing gets more credit than his voice, which I'm saying is not a bad thing. Those are, they made him what he is, but, his voice was still amazing. But, George Jones, the Grand Tour, if you've heard that song, how does that not hit you, even if you've never experienced? I was a kid and that song broke my heart. I was like, what do I know about my woman leaving me and taking the baby? That's the thing though, is I love those great heartbreak songs even before I had experienced anything like that, and a lot of the things in the songs I still have never experienced, but I never want to. I don't want to put that out there, but just those great songs. And I'm just saying a couple from each decade. I'm obviously missing a whole bunch. Tammy Wynette, Loretta Lynn, there's so many. You get to the 70s and you get, obviously these artists were going before the 70s, but you get the outlaw movement, which Waylon Jennings especially hated that word, but it's really what's become known as the music, so it's the way to describe it. You know, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, which, you know, had been obviously back starting in the 50s, I believe, late 50s, if not very early 60s. But you got Hank Williams Jr. came along, which, you know, he was doing his dad's stuff, and then towards the middle of the 70s to the later 70s started to do his own thing, which, you know, he was like entertainer of the year almost every year. He was so big. But you know, once you get to the 80s, you get some of the more polished, almost poppier stuff, which they've had all along. They had like those songs in the 60s with the strings behind them, the orchestras and stuff. You know, you got Jim Reeves and stuff like that, you know. But toward the 80s, it started to get almost a bad name in country music, like the urban cowboy phase you hear about all the time, you know, with Johnny Lee and Mickey Gilley and stuff like that, you know, from that urban cowboy movie. And it gave country kind of a bad name, but I was always like, you always hear Randy Travis in 1986 saved country music with The Storms of Life, his very first album. I wouldn't say he saved country music, he saved traditional country music. Because some of that stuff, like the Steve Wariner from the 80s, you know, it was a poppier sound, but it was still, you know, listen to the song Small Town Girl. That's a country song right there. If you don't have the more polished and you know, pop sounding production, you put fiddle and you know, steel guitars on that, and you know, that's stone cold country. It was still country. It's just, you know, and I know I rag on today's music, and at least the pop music of the 80s that was country, at least it had actual instruments. But, you know, I'll get into a little bit of that at the end. I'll let myself rant at the end because I'm just like raring to go on that. But anyway, like I said, Randy Travis didn't save country music. He saved traditional country music. I think country music was fine, though, you know, how it was. I'm glad that it did get back to more traditional country, though, is the point, though. Because, you know, that stuff coming back from George Jones, coming back from Hank Williams. And you could even argue that, you know, people that say that still love the outlaw country music. I mean, what was outlaw country music? It was rock. Like, listen to Waylon Jennings. That is straight up, like, yeah, it has fiddles and stuff, but it's straight up rock music, like, as far as, like, you know, the tempo and everything else. But, you know, the same people that were condemning some of the urban cowboy stuff and the more polished stuff, you know, love the outlaw stuff. I guarantee you people in Hank Williams' day, if they probably heard the outlaw stuff and hated it, you know. It's all about perspective. You know, as long as you're not, like I said, I'm trying not to get on that one yet, but as long as you're, the country music is about more than just, as some people today don't seem to think, it's more than about trucks and drinking beer. It's about family life. It's about, you know, heartaches. It's about love. It's about, you know, your kids. It's about your family. You know, the instruments. Yeah, I definitely love to hear steel guitar and fiddles and every song. I believe, you know, it can be put in every song. But if it's not there, you know, it depends on the song. You know, and like I said, I don't want to hear songs with, like we're hearing today, with literal fake instruments. There's you hear them and it's obvious the drums are electronic. They're not even actual drums. Like, I'll try to save it. Anyway, my whole point of that is that, yeah, Randy Travis definitely saved traditional country music. But like I said, I think, you know, the other stuff was still good too. But that Storms of Life album was amazing. Like I said, Digging Up Bones is one I was always obsessed with. And then we get into what's known as the class of 1989, which takes us into the 90s. And if you don't know, the class of 1989 consisted of, and there was other artists, but the main ones that were known in this class is Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, Clint Black, and Travis Tritt. And they all have different sounds if you know, break them down and list them. Garth Brooks, you know, He's got the powerful vocals. A lot of people accuse him, and I'll get a little more of this a little bit, of ruining country music and turning it to pop. And he didn't do any. If you listen to his songs, there is prominent steel guitar and fiddles. There is freaking cowboy themes out the wazoo. It irritates me that people talk all this trash about Garth Brooks' music, and I really think it's just because he got so popular and crossed. And see, when later groups and bands and artists would cross over, like Faith Hill, they would. You've seen that with Taylor Swift, obviously. I don't think she ever was country. Her first couple albums she might have tried, but anyway, when they cross over to try to get a crossover, they'll put out a pop. Shania Twain was bad about this, which I love her music, but I hate when she literally came out with an album that had a pop mix and a country mix, which is just shows right there, and it wasn't needed. But the artist would. By the way, sorry, this microphone takes up my whole face. You don't need to see my face anyway. But, well, if you're listening on Spotify, you ain't hearing my face. And you ain't hearing my face. I don't know what I'm saying. But anyway, my point on that is that a lot of, when they wanted to cross over, they'll put out a pop mix of it, where, like Lone Star did with Amazed. I actually like their version, so it's funny I use this as an example. But they put out once Amazed starting getting huge, they put out a pop mix with more rock guitars, and I actually liked the mix. I actually bought the tape single. I was gonna say CD single, the tape single that had like 2 or 3 different mixes on it. But it started getting really bad with like Faith Hill doing it, and then like I said, Shania Twain, where they would just take the whole soul out of the song trying to make it cross over. My whole point of that is Garth Brooks didn't do that. When if his songs were played on the pop charts, and a lot of them really weren't. I think Shameless was, and his video for the Thunder Rolls was played on MTV just because of the controversy, and they banned it on CMT. But like, if you ever heard any of his stuff on there, he didn't do anything. It went pop because it was popular. And instead of celebrating this as like, wow, people are like seeing country music now, it's not just this little genre of hick hillbillies, while we're over here with our pop music and rock and I won't even say R&B and rap, because they weren't strictly, well, they were in the pop charts, but it was, it took it took longer for them to get there than just, I guess you'd call it pop. I don't know what other music you call stuff like I don't know, what's a example? Celine Dion. What type of music? It's weird to call something pop music because it's anything can be pop, but that's the phrase for it. Anyway, I'm getting off on tangents. If you've seen this podcast or heard it before, I do that. But it just irritates me that Garth Brooks got that reputation for ruining country music. A lot of it is because he did the Billy Joel song Shameless. But listen to it. The steel guitar, like, one of the greatest steel guitar, I don't know if you call them riffs or whatever you call them, but not riffs. Obviously, it's not a guitar, but it's its own thing. If you don't know what a steel guitar is, listen to some old country, the really twangy, almost whiny sound that country gets a bad rap for. It's one of my favorite instruments, and I always love to hear that instrument. But anyway, that's enough about that. Like I said, that was Garth Brooks, and he obviously ended up becoming sales wise and popularity wise the greatest of those class of 89 artists. Although that it's always up for debate on which one was better. I'm just talking about like strictly sales wise. You got Alan Jackson, though. Talk about tradition sound. He took what Randy Travis was doing, and he actually wrote a few songs with Randy Travis, unsurprisingly. But took what he was doing and just continued it into the 90s. And he had some rockin' stuff. I mean, you listen to Chattahoochee. Yeah, it's country, but I mean, that's, the rock guitar on that, and, it was different. but like I said, he was traditional, but he could go a little bit, not in the pop, I wouldn't say pop route, but you know, a little bit more in the rockin' route, but then always dial it back to country. And just, you know, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about Alan Jackson or his music ever. Like, he's one of those ones that, like, you know, nobody's ever said anything bad about. Clint Black, known for his guitar playing, his amazing songwriting, but I mean, his voice was amazing too. He was the first one to come out with, like, I think 4 number ones from an album, I think that's right. Yeah, I think it was like 4 number ones. Either the first one to have 4 number ones on the same album, or on the debut album, or 4 in a row. I can't remember, but he was from Texas, and just him and his songwriting partner, I can't think of his name right now, but they wrote some of the best songs, and just his voice was out of all of them. I think his voice was probably the best. And then you've got Travis Tritt, which is completely different than all the other ones. You know, you would think that he wouldn't have fit in with this class because just his, he was outlaw country for the 90s, basically. I've seen him in concert twice. Amazing shows. Which I think he's the only one I've seen twice, and it wasn't the same show at all. It wasn't like he's, out there doing a paint by numbers, I'm going to get paid, so I'm just going to sing the greatest hits. He was, he gets up there and just rocks out, basically. But still a lot of country themes in it. It wasn't like he was just a rock and roll guy. He was, he was that edge of country that I think really needed. And all those artists, we've got Garth Brooks with the sound and the more, well, when he came out, he wasn't like doing any of the stuff that would cross over. But, it was strictly country music. Nobody could argue that first album. There's a lot of people that argue his other albums, but nobody can argue that first album. But you got the traditional of Alan Jackson. You've got the voice and more of a almost folk ear, I guess you would say, songwriting style of Clint Black, where it wasn't, And that's the thing, is all 4 of these were songwriters. I mean, there's other writers on their songs, obviously. But Garth Brooks, such a diverse... You listen to all the songs that he's written, just such a diverse... he loves cowboy songs, but he loves songs about, social issues, and, songs about relationships gone wrong. And you got Alan... those heartbreak songs he does, and then that got stuff like Chattahoochee. Just nobody probably even heard of that word. And then the hoochie coochie line, don't get me started on that thing. See, only Alan Jackson could do that line. If Garth Brooks would have done that line, you're like, oh, what's he saying? Ban it from the radio. But you got Clint Black with oh God, Killing Time. That song. Trying to get into individual songs here till I get to the list, but Killing Time got to be one of the greatest songs ever made. And talk about that with Travis Tritt. You got stuff like the heartbreak songs like Anymore, Help Me Hold On, and then you've got the almost the Kiss My Butt, try not to cuss here, of Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares. But that I got... my dad got me some tapes from Columbia House. If you remember them, we all owe them money if you're from the 90s. But the tapes that I got all at once were, it was for starting the club. I don't know. I don't ever got any of the other tapes. He probably canceled it or who knows what. Because if you don't remember Columbia House, and I think there was a couple of them. Columbia House was always the biggest one. First it was tapes, then it was CDs, but you join the club, it was like 12 tapes for a penny or $1 or something like that, or CDs later on. But, whatever the number was. But they would send you these tapes, it's like a great offer for this. But then you had to, each month they would send out another one until you canceled, and you had to pay full price for it. and most people just forgot to cancel it, and they ended up owing them. Like, they wouldn't do that today. You'd have to pay for anything before they send it out, or it's a subscription, so it comes out of your card. If they even, they obviously don't do that anymore, but that's how it would work today. Back then, they didn't do that. Anyway, these tapes that I got were Randy Travis's Heroes and Friends, which was, that song alone was great. But that was a great album. Garth Brooks' second album, No Fences. You talk about your all-timers on there. Two of a Kind, Working on a Full House, The Thunder Rolls, Friends in Low Places. That right there is one of his signature albums. And Travis Tritt's It's All About to Change, which was his second one. And had Any More on it. That album was just amazing, too. But then later on, I got into... like I said, we get into the 90s, and just, we'll go from there. So my list now, I tried to make a top 100. I couldn't get there, and I don't want to stretch it and add people that I didn't really know just to fill out a list. So I ended up getting a top 75, well, not even top, just 75 singles artists. Singles artists, that sounded weird. Just singers, I guess. 75 artists, and then 20... I grouped them into duos, bands, and groups because I didn't want to do a separate duo list because there's not as many. But anyway, these aren't actual rankings, except my number one is my favorite of all time. These aren't actual rankings. I just kind of went by year of either when they came out or released songs. Because I didn't want to try to do it's very hard. Like, I've ranked other things and they're kind of hard. But ranking this is really hard. And hopefully I'm not taking too long here. We're already at 29 minutes. I'm sorry. But I'm not going to go, in depth in any of these because, I don't have that much space on my memory card. But what I do want to do is, give a couple of my favorite songs or maybe a memory or so if anything pops up. If I speed past anybody, it's not because, I don't like them. And there may be songs, I haven't done research on this as far as what is their top songs? I'm just going by my memories. I may forget, some of the greatest songs they've done, but it's not, it's not on purpose. Anyway, my number one, and I've gone back and forth sometimes of whether my favorite artist of all time is either Hank Williams Sr. or George Strait. But it always comes back to me that it's got to be for me Garth Brooks. And I know everybody's, but the stupid "where's the dead bodies" crap that's on social media that started from some comedian's joke is just annoying and lame. Anyway, I was introduced to Garth Brooks like everybody was in 1989 with his first album. And just, man, there's so many memories of Garth Brooks. Those concert specials from the 90s, like that first one he did, This is Garth Brooks, and then This is Garth Brooks 2. And if everybody remembers his concert from Central Park on HBO, I didn't get to watch that, but it was so big that they broadcast it on the radio, and I got to hear it that night. It was so amazing. But had over 1 million people in Central Park there to watch his concert, like just people as far as you could see in Central Park. But I can't say enough good things about him. If you were to ask me my favorite all-time song, I go back and forth of whether it's Shameless or That Summer. Both great songs. Both of his, probably they'd call poppier songs, but again, listen to them. And the steel guitar is prominent in those songs. And I'm not saying if you have a steel guitar, you're automatically country. But just the fact that people overlook, it's like I said, I think people just have a problem with him. They don't think he's genuine because he always does interviews and cries at things. It's, people take that can take that as off-putting. I just take it as him being emotional about things. He wears his heart on his sleeve. Nothing ever seems fake to me, but it seems like that to everybody else. But if you hate Garth Brooks, I'm not going to be able to convince you. If you love Garth Brooks, you know what I'm talking about. It's always seems to be too well. There's some people in the middle that just listen to music and don't have an opinion on the man. I happen to have a very high opinion of him. I've got every album he's ever put out. I've got his almost all of his anthology book sets. I even bought his collections that people always say, oh, he puts out the same stuff over and over again. I'm sorry I'm taking too long. I'm not going to spend this much time on everybody, I promise. But it's just, some of his, obviously Friends in Low Places is probably his career song. His favorite song he does is The Dance. Like I said, my favorites are probably Shameless, That Summer. There's so many good ones. The Beaches of Cheyenne is a great song too. So many great songs. But number 2, obviously Randy Travis. And again, these aren't ranked. But Randy Travis came out in 86. But, and by the way, on this list, if I mention songs, they're not all going to be from strictly the 90s. They may be from other decades. It's just the songs that pop into my head. But obviously 1982, Digging Up Bones from that first album. I loved so much of Randy Travis's stuff. Heroes and Friends was a great song. It's sad what happened to him with his stroke. But I actually really enjoyed his AI song. More Where That Came From. I think there's no more where that came from. Say what you want about AI. I think in cases like this, when the artist literally can't sing anymore, and you're taking vocals from his albums, I don't see a problem with that. It's, if somebody came out that can't sing and they just, put an AI and had a career out of that, that's a different thing, Special circumstances like this, I don't have a problem with that. The song sounded good. Clint Black, which we've already talked about, Killin' Time, amazing song. Everything from that Killin' Time album, Walking Away, Nobody's Home, Nothing's News. Those are some great songs. He's had an amazing career. Love his duet with Martina McBride. Holding On, that's what it is. I had to think. I don't want to say coming in at number 4, but 4th on my list is Alan Jackson, as we've talked about, one of the class of 1989. Obviously, I'm going to have the ones I talked about here near the top because I was thinking about them first. But Alan's had a heck of a career. I love all his stuff, but especially his earliest stuff. Wanted, the song. Basically, he's just singing a ad he's placing about, basically asking forgiveness from his woman. That was a great song. Here in the real world, Chattahoochee, obviously. She's got the rhythm, I got the blues. I could name so many songs if I had time to sit and think about it, but I'm trying not to. You guys, leave your favorite songs of some of your favorite artists in the comments if you want. Travis Tritt, like I said, if you ever seen his video trilogy where he plays the wounded army vet, it's Anymore, Tell Me I Was Dreaming, and If I Lost You. It's a village. It's a video trilogy. If you can find the actual videos on YouTube, I mean, his performance of Anymore, there's a live performance, which is like the greatest performance that he's ever done of the song. But if you watch the actual videos, that the story is amazing on there. But so many songs of Travis Tritt's I love. Help Me Hold On, Here's a Quarter, Anymore. Obviously, I won a singing competition with that song. I love that song. Now we've got one I haven't talked about yet, Vince Gill. Talk about a voice. I mean, that guy's been going since, I believe, I don't know if the 70s, but since the 80s. He was in Pure Prairie League. I mean, today he's in the freaking Eagles. I mean, the Eagles, got him to join their band basically after, was it before? I think it was after Glenn Frey died. I want to say he was in there before, too, but maybe not. Probably not. But, I mean, he's that good. The Eagles asked him to join. But his country music, oh, man. When I Call Your Name, I Still Believe in You. His voice, oh. And the duet with Reba McEntire, The Heart Won't Lie, that's so great. what was I gonna say about Vince? Oh yeah, the all time favorite, "Go Rest High on That Mountain." Anybody that's ever lost anybody, especially like when I lost my dad, that I had the song play at the funeral and lost it. But Vince Gill, great guitar player, great songwriter, great voice. There's nothing this guy couldn't do. Speaking of tire, her biggest period was during the 80s, but she still had a heck of a career in the 90s as well. And it's not about which, what decade their career was in. If they were still putting out songs in the decade, I'm going to include them on the list. Just like I said, I like more of Reba's 80s stuff more, but she still had some great songs. The It's Your Call album. I remember, Is There Life Out There? Especially the video where she went to college. That was my mom's theme song when she was going back to college in the 90s. She loved Reba McEntire too. She had her live album. We would listen to it while we were working out during the summer. It was funny. We'd be working out with my mom in the dining room. It was fun though, and like I said, we got to listen to some great music. Falling Out of Love. Obviously, everybody knows Fancy. Everybody thinks that was her biggest song, and it probably was her biggest song, but it wasn't even a number one. Probably because of the controversy, it didn't get to number one. If you know that song. Now we got George Strait, which I said sometimes I've seen him in concert. I won tickets on the radio. Where do you get started on his music? Amarillo by Morning, Baby Blue, I Cross My Heart, Carrying Your Love With Me, Check Yes or No, Write This Down. I could go on for days. Over 50 number ones. Definitely in my top 3 of all time. Love that guy to death. He still does concerts and still puts out albums even after he retired, just because he just loves the music so much, and his music never changes. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Obviously it's up to date sound, but still you're going to get those fiddles, you're going to get the steel, you're going to get the best songs. And he was one that wasn't known as a songwriter. He did write some songs, but none of them became hits. But that's the thing in country. You got your songwriters that do great, but you've also got the guys that go and look for those songs. And if it wasn't for guys like that, all the greatest songwriters of all time would never have a career. And there's been some great songwriters that weren't, didn't sing, or if they did, they weren't popular. You can't just have the complete package of the singer-songwriter. Sometimes you got to have guys that just pick out good songs. And then sometimes there's great songwriters that will go and find other songs. It's all about finding that right song, the right sound. And George Strait knew it. Just absolutely knew it. Speaking of one that absolutely knew how to sing, Patti Loveless. She was in some of those, When I Call Your Name, she was the female background voice on that, and can't even really call her a background voice. She, no matter who she'd sing with, she would almost out-sing them. But her, How Can I Help You to Say Goodbye, if you've ever heard that song, that one gets you. My favorite of hers is You Don't Seem to Miss Me, the duet with George Jones. Just something about that song's always got me. I love that song. You Can Feel Bad If It Makes You Feel Better. I keep saying, such great songs. It's, what else am I gonna say? Then we got Steve Wariner, as I talked about him from the 80s. I loved his 80s stuff probably the most. The Small Town Girl, Some Fools Never Learn might be my favorite. But he had a resurgence in the mid to later 90s with Holes in the Floor of Heaven, Two Teardrops. People thought his career was over. Just like another one, John Anderson, I'll get to in a little bit, but had a huge resurgence in the 90s. Terry Clark, she is from Canada. She was, not the typical female singer of the 90s, She was, a cowgirl through and through. Better Things to Do, If I Were You, When Boy Meets Girl. Just some of those great songs from the 90s. And she was strictly like, most of her fame came in the 90s. For some of these other people, they might have started in the 80s and stuff. I think that's the first one on the list that really, had almost her entire career in the 90s. She had a couple songs in the 2000s, but I didn't really like them as well. Not that they were bad, I just didn't like them as well. Then we got Lori Morgan, daughter of Grand Ole Opry star George Morgan. She had some great songs in the 80s and 90s, but the early 90s is when her career really kicked off. She was married to Keith Whitley, and I hate to say her career took off after he died, and not saying that that's the reason her career took off. She's actually going to be in Seymour. I can't remember when that is, but I might go see that show. But like I said, I wasn't saying that Keith Whitley dying helped her career. I was just saying she was obviously everybody was overshadowed by Keith Whitley, but she still would have had a career whether he'd lived or not. Like I said, that wasn't what I was trying to say. It's just that's when her career took off, the time period. But she had those great songs like Something in Red, Out of Your Shoes Tonight, We Both Walk, 5 Minutes. Oh, I love that song. Marty Stewart, definitely one of those ones that's like, not played as mainstream, even in the 90s, as he should have been, I think. Definitely known for his duets with Travis Tritt, The Whiskey Ain't Working, and my favorite, which weren't even the popular of the duets, was This One's Gonna Hurt You for a Long Time. But he had some great songs like Tempted, and one I really love he did with within the 2000s with Merle Haggard, The Farmer's Daughter. Not The Farmer's Daughter, Farmer's Blues. I knew Farmer's in there. Merle Haggard did The Farmer's Daughter too, but Farmer's Blues, there's something about that song was really good. Marty Stewart, one of those. If you ever seen the Ken Burns country music documentary they had on PBS a few years ago, that thing was great. But Marty Stewart really showed how much of a historian he was. Like he knows the ins and outs of everything in country music. If I ever got a chance to pick his brain, it would be amazing. But Doug Stone, whew, talk about a voice there. Doug Stone was amazing. All-time favorite is Better Off in a Pine Box. Whew, that's a heartbreaker there. But Jukebox with a Country Song, Made for Loving You, In a Different Light, great songs. Ricky Van Shelton had most of his success in the 80s. He did a lot of older songs, but made them, new and became popular. But just I'll Leave This World Loving You, Keep It Between the Lines. That was a tear jerker there. Wild Man. Like I said, he did some of the older ones like From a Jack to a King. But, Somebody Lied, that's probably my favorite of his. Great artist that I wish would have had a longer career. A lot of these fit into that category. Mary Chapin Carpenter, she was more a folk singer that was turned to a country singer, but she had a pretty successful run in the early 90s. He Thinks He'll Keep Her. I Feel Lucky, that was a funny song. Quitting Time. She wasn't, what you consider country, but if you look, you take all these artists on here, they're all unique, and they all fit together to make country music, at least to me. We've got Mark Chestnut, there's Stone Cold Country, Too Cold at Home, Brother Jukebox, which, by the way, Keith Whitley did first, but wasn't released as a single, I don't believe. Almost Goodbye, Sure as Monday, Going Through the Big D. Mark Chestnut just, man, hit after hit after hit in the 90s. Then we've got Billy Dean, Billy the Kid, Only Here for a Little While, One of my favorite ones isn't even as much well known. It was put out in the 2000s. I'm in Love with You. That's a great love song. But some of his 90s stuff, We Just Disagree. Just great singer. Just, man, he's... There's a lot. I just get to thinking about some, like, I wish they would have stayed, you know... Because not just about being popular, it's, you know... The popular the more records you put out, you know. The ones that don't get as popular and don't get played as much, you know, go longer stretches without putting out new music. It's just like what could have been if the radio would have had their heads out of their asses and played some, sorry for the language, played some of this good music still instead of kicking these artists to the freaking curb. And I think the record labels probably had a lot to do with it too. You know, let's move on to the next one, move on to the next one. He's had 3 good albums. Who cares now? Get him out the door. Anyway, sorry for that sidebar. Trisha Yearwood, obviously the wife of Garth Brooks now, so of course you're going to talk about her. I would have mentioned her even if they would have never met. But she's in love with the boy, you know, right out the gate with a #1 there. But I mean, her voice. One from 2005, Georgia Rain. Thinking About You. X's and O's. Just some of her best songs weren't even singles. He Don't Know Nothing About Memphis. If you look up that song, she sings her freaking butt off on that song. Pam Tillis, daughter of Mel Tillis, the country star that everybody I don't want to say make fun of, but because of his stuttering, they don't really make fun of it. It's kind of, you know, it's all tongue in cheek, and you know, he went along with the jokes too. It's not like anybody was making fun of him. But he was, you know, well known for his stuttering. But Pam Tillis, talking about some songs there. Maybe it was Memphis. Came out of the gate with that one. That one was just simply amazing. If you never heard, maybe it was Memphis. Look that up. Don't tell me what to do. Just some great songs. Then we got Tanya Tucker, which had different phases of her career. The 90s was like more of her, like, you know, kind of rocking stuff like Trouble. What was the one song? I'm trying to think here. Sorry, give me a second. It's a little too late. But she's also had some great songs, like 2 other songs that weren't just rocking songs, like Two Sparrows and a Hurricane. Of course, everybody knows her from the, you know, her, I think it was 70s, Delta Dawn, her first song when she was like, I think 16 or something. Yeah, but she had a long career. Aaron Tippin came along in the 90s, just real redneck voice that was just, you know, so good on the radio. Speaking of radio, Ain't Nothing Wrong with the Radio, one of his biggest songs, where the Stars and Stripes and the Eagle Fly. A song that I don't believe was released as a single was called Adore. It's Adore, but it's a great song. He had so many great songs. Working Man's PhD. Yeah, he really made songs for, you know, the everyday man. There was a lot on here that, you know, you weren't sure, but he you know, he was like the blue collar guy and sung for the blue collar guy. But Neil McCoy, oh man, he was so good. So he had really catchy songs. Wink. Then You Can Tell Me Goodbye, which was like a cover of the 60s songs. The Shake. Like I said, he has some really catchy songs. No Doubt About It, that was a really good love song. And then we've got Joe Diffie. Man, rest in peace. He died in 2020. I'm still not over that one. My favorite song of his, and one of my all-time favorites of all time, Is It Cold in Here? Whew, that song hits you, whether you've never felt it or not. He had some great songs. Pickup Man, Third Rock from the Sun, John Deere Green, Ships That Don't Come In. Wow, what a song that was. Home. I remember my dad singing that song. Freaking blew me away hearing him sing that. And just one of my favorite songs to sing. I've got Dwight Yoakam. What a sound! Like, if you put rockabilly in the dictionary, you'd put him next to it for that description. He had so many great songs, coming out of the 80s with Guitars, Cadillacs, Streets of Bakersfield with Buck Owens, and then his stuff from the 90s, 1,000 Miles from Nowhere, All Fast as You. That song was that was a heavy song. Heavy song. It's not from the freaking 60s or 70s. It's a heavy song, dude. Hal Ketchum came out in the 90s. Man, I love his song. Past the Point of Rescue was his first album. His probably most well-known song was Small Town Saturday Night. But I love some of his love songs like Sure Love, I Know Where Love Lives. He had a really deep, if you listen to his albums, like some of his stuff on his albums that weren't released as singles were better than the singles. And you'll find that with some artists too. I mean, some artists do put out their best stuff on the radio. Some it's like, and maybe it's just my personal preferences. I'm not saying like they didn't put out their best stuff. And sometimes they can't because the record labels, like, oh, we're going to put out this gimmicky song here. But Hal Ketchum, rest in peace to him too. Great talent. And then we got one that'll be controversial. I know, Billy Ray Cyrus. He's freaking out there and crazy as his daughter is today, but and wasn't like I'm saying, like, when he came in the 90s, he was loved by everybody. He was loved by a lot, hated by a lot. Everybody knows Achy Breaky Heart. It ruined country music, but if you listen to that same album, Some Gave All, how could you listen to that and not almost shed a tear? But his other stuff, not everything was Achy Breaky Heart. Yeah, it was a gimmicky type song where, it got the radio play and the crossover appeal and everything else, and he was dancing with it and all this other controversy. But listen to the Could Have Been Me, Where Am I Gonna Live When I Get Home? There's not a countryer song than that. Where am I? That's one word. Where am I gonna live when I get home? My old lady's thrown out everything I just. I think he told the story like George Jones wanted that song when he cut it like right before he was going to. But Words by Heart. Should Have Been Me or Could Have Been Me. I think I already said that, didn't I? I can't remember if I said that or not, but Could Have Been, Should Have Been Me. It Should Have Been Me. Could Have Been Me was a great song. Just, if you get past the Achy Breaky Heart and the dancing and all the other stuff, he really did make some great music. I wish he was making better personal choices in his life, but, that's neither here nor there. That has nothing to do with the music. Sammy Kershaw, Yard Sales, got to be my favorite, one of my favorite songs of all time. Definitely my favorite of his. Favorite song to sing. I'd still say that's my favorite thing I've ever sung, like, before. Like, I never say this about myself, but I nailed that song when I sung it. But anyway, Meant to Be, Don't Go Near the Water. My mom always laughed at the part because the way he sung it sounded like her dad, Papa Jesse. But by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning, it wasn't just my dad's mom and dad that listened to music. It was I don't remember my granny listened to much music, just country when it was on. But Papa Jesse was always in the kitchen listening to bluegrass, and I didn't really like bluegrass at the time. I've grown to really love and appreciate it since. But I remember I was getting on a tangent on something and I forgot to mention that. So sorry, Papa Jesse. I know you're somewhere up there right now sitting in the kitchen listening to bluegrass. I just know it. But where did I go into bluegrass? Oh yeah, I was talking about the line in the Don't Go Near the Water that my mom always laughed at. Had to get the honeysuckle out of your hair. The way he said hair, just like my Papa Jesse, always made her laugh. But he had some great music. Colin Ray, what a voice. When I get to October of 1991 of the Tales from the 90s podcast, I will be talking about his signature song "Love Me" and the impact it had on my grandma dying that very same month when the song came out, and hearing that song literally at the funeral, like from the radio that was playing, talk about haunting. But just Colin Ray had so many hits. Little Red Rodeo was one of his later ones, but That's My Story. That's a funny song. If I Were You, Little Rock. Whew, what a song that is. And we got Tracy Lawrence. Whew. I keep going, woo, I know, but like just thinking like these artists one after another, like Tracy Lawrence, all-time favorite song is Sticks and Stones. He has so many great ones. Time Marches On, Alibis, Can't Break It to My Heart, If You Loved Me, Running Behind, Renegades, Rebels, and Rogues. I'm going to stop myself or I just keep going on him. John Anderson, I talked a little bit earlier about how he had a resurgence. You know, he was a popular in the 70s. He was popular in the 70s and the 80s. You know, Swingin' is probably his number one hit of all time, but that's really rival with a couple that came out in the 90s. He came back with Straight Tequila Night, and it's like, I thought he was some new guy, because I hadn't even, if I had heard his songs, it'd only been, you know, heard it, but not even recognized his name. But that Straight Tequila Night came out, and that song went up there, and it was hit after hit after that. Freaking Seminole Wind, whew, what a song that was. When It Comes to You, I Wish I Could Have Been There. That song really hits you. If you know the Cat Stevens song, Cats in the Cradle, that was kind of a more modern version of that song. The same theme, at least. I don't mean more modern, just the same theme. But yeah, John Anderson, and the voice. If you're ever singing a John Anderson song, you know, you might, sometimes when you sing songs that are on the radio, you kind of imitate them. Everybody that does the John Anderson song does the John Anderson voice, and it sounds funny. But yeah, he has a signature voice for sure. Winona Judd, you know, the Judds are on the list later on in the duo or band or group list, but obviously the Judds had to quit touring, but then Winona started her solo career, and that took off like a freaking rocket. No One Else on Earth, She Is His Only Need, Tell Me Why, just great song. Her song with Clint Black, A Bad Goodbye, whew, what a song that is. Those two complement each other perfectly. I wish Clint Black would have done like a whole duets album. Just, he had so many great ones, and especially the ones with his wife. Sorry, I'm good back on Clint Black. But anyway, Leroy. No, I skipped one there. I'll get to Leroy Parnell in a minute. I don't want to skip too many and go back because I'll forget. But because I definitely won't want to forget this one, Martina McBride, as my dad called her, his girlfriend. Independence Day. It's like Independence Day, drop the mic. That's all you need to say. No, but she had some great songs. Life Number 9, Cry on the Shoulder of the Road. And she had a great career into the 2000s. People probably know more of her music, like This One's for the Girls, Blessed, some of that stuff. But I mean, Where Would You Be? Whatever You Say. She had just a great, powerful voice. Like, that voice is amazing. Now we get to Leroy Parnell. Iconic slide guitar sound that he had. Oh, my favorite song of his is On the Road or The Road. I think it's On the Road. That's a great song there. He was known for that slide guitar. Like, what was the one song? Some idiot's calling me. I don't know who's calling. Probably some scam. Anyway, Holding My Own. Sorry, it took me a minute. I was playing the song out through my head, and it got to the line of what it was. But yeah, Leroy Parnell. If you never heard of him, just the guitar playing alone was great, but his songs were good too. Chris Ledoux, obviously a hero of Garth Brooks. rodeo cowboy that became a country singer. Had a huge career in especially the early 90s. Did the What You Gonna Do with a Cowboy, the duet with Garth Brooks. This Cowboy's hat. Cadillac Ranch is probably his signature song. And then we've got Toby Keith. Ooh, where do you get started on that one? I don't know where to even begin with Toby Keith. Obviously, his signature songs, stuff like, obviously his number one, I think, all-time song should have been a cowboy. And then we got the Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, obviously. But, I mean, I loved the different stages of his career. Great ballads in the 90s. Is That Blue Moon Ever Shine on You? Shouldn't Kiss Me Like This. Then there's Who's That Man? Ain't Much Fun Since I Quit Drinking. And then just, like, on the 2000s. Whiskey Girl. I Love This Bar. I mean, Toby Keith had the freaking a career, like, it's so sad that he passed away from cancer at still relatively young age, and was still, even with cancer, was still up there, wanting to perform. Loved the music so much, and we love his music so much. That one's still fresh. Let's see. We've got Tracy Byrd, which I'm going to should be going to see him in, I think, either the end of July or beginning of August. It's the Jackson County Watermelon Festival. Which, yes, Tracy Byrd at the Watermelon Festival, because that was probably his signature song, Watermelon Crawl. Everybody knows that song. He's got to do that song there. But of course, another one of his signature songs was Keeper of the Stars. Loved all his stuff. I Want to Feel That Way Again, I'm From the Country, Big Love. And Doug Supernall, another one. We're getting to a lot that have passed away in the last few years. His number one signature song was I Don't Call Him Daddy, but I love a lot of his stuff. I believe his first song was Reno. That was a great song too. Just, another one that I wish, he only had like 3 or 4 albums that came out, but and some of the stuff on the albums was, as good, if not better than the singles, which of course is a theme here, you can see. Next, we get to John Michael Montgomery. That one, I believe he's retired from touring, finally. I wish I would have been able to see him in concert. Just, his voice is just amazing, and he had so many hits. Of course, everybody knows I Can Love You Like That, I Swear, and Life's a Dance, Beer and Bones, Home to You. So many great songs. Man, he could sing anything. Just he's one of them ones that could definitely sing a ballad. We're at number 40 now, just because I haven't been mentioning the numbers, because I said they're not ranked, so I didn't keep mentioning the numbers. But we're at 40, so I'm trying not to go too long on this list, I promise. But number 40 is Clay Walker. Right out the bat, came out with a number one. If I Could Make a Living Out of Loving You, which Alan Jackson wrote. Then he had This Woman, This Man, Live Until I Die, The Chain of Love, Then What, which is kind of like an islandy song, which I normally don't like those. Like, if someone's doing that, but if, a one-off like that, or like Garth Brooks' Two Pina Coladas, or, I'm not a huge island guy. I only liked a few of Jimmy Buffett's songs, don't hate me. I'm not saying I didn't like him, it's just I only like a few of his songs. I gotta be like, I say I got to be in the mood. I ain't never been to the islands. Maybe if I've been there, maybe I'll like them more. Anyway, that had nothing to do with that, just that song, Then What. Next is Tim McGraw. I'll just say right now, I don't like the music he's been making the last 10 or so years. He's really just conformed to doing what he can to get on the radio. I would say it's sad, but I guess it's not, because you got to make a living. Even though he's rich, you still want to get played on the radio. It's just sad that he's compromised the good music for pop crap that just blends in with all the rest of the pop crap. Anyway, Signature song for me always going to be "Don't Take the Girl," but he had some great songs. "Sleep on It Tonight," of course, "Indian Outlaws," controversial, we know. That "Everywhere" album he had with, "Everywhere," obviously. "Where the Green Grass Grows," "It's Your Love," the duet with Faith Hill. That was a massive song. Then we got one that ain't well known, probably. He'd only had a few hits. Rick Trevino. "Running Out of Reasons to Run" was probably my favorite song of his. Like I said, he didn't have a lot of hits. He was more than a one-hit wonder. But, I wish he would have gotten more play. Same with the next one, David Ball. He came out the gate with "Thinking Problem." That voice, whew, man, that was like just stone cold country voice. But he had some great songs too. "When the Thought of You Catches Up with Me," "Riding with Private Malone" came out in like the early 2000s, kind of gave him a mini little resurgence. I wish he would have, they would have played him more, but obviously they're not going to, other than a one-off. John Barry, that was a voice right there. "Your Love Amazes Me," "She's Taking a Shine," "You and Only You," "Standing on the Edge of Goodbye" might be my favorite of his. Then we got Faith Hill, which, like I said, kind of went too popular later on. Although I did like the "Breathe" album where she kind of started. I guess the crossover came the album before. It was the song "This Kiss" really started her crossover, but I love her earlier stuff. "Wild One," "Piece of My Heart," "I Can't Do That Anymore," which was written by Alan Jackson. That was a great song. Obviously her duet with Tim McGraw for "It's Your Love," "Let's Make Love," and "Angry All the Time" are the three duets that they did together. I don't like the newer ones. Kenny Chesney's actually going in the Hall of Fame this year, and people are like, but he's had a heck of a career, no matter what you say about him. But my favorite will always be his 90s stuff. "Grandpa Told Me So," "Fall in Love." There's a song he did that wasn't released. It was just on the album with him, Tracy Lawrence, and George Jones, called "From Hillbilly Heaven to Honky Tonk Hell." Just listen to that song. Whew, that'll blow you away. But yeah, he was more known for his island stuff later on. But I mean, that's pretty much what got him popular. And to the last few years, I've liked all his stuff. Again, he's not as bad as Tim McGraw, but he trends that way. Jeff Carson, one that's died in the last few years. His signature song was probably "The Car." That's a heartbreaking song about a guy that wants a car to bond with his dad, and his dad dies and gives him the car, like gives him the keys, and just after he obviously didn't give them to him, he left him. But he had some great songs too. "God Save the World." One that didn't get played near as much. He did songs on like Facebook, like it was like Throwback Thursday, I think, and he did like a song a week. And I've like went back and watched these videos, after he'd passed away. He went away from the music business, actually became a cop, and was still doing music a little bit on the sides, and just on Facebook and stuff. Still had the talent. Wade Hayes, I believe he was Canadian, but I might be wrong on there. But he had some great songs. "Old Enough to Know Better, Still Too Young to Care." That was probably his biggest. David Lee Murphy, obviously the signature song there is "Dust on the Bottle." But I love some of his other stuff too, like "The Road You Leave Behind," "Party Crowd." I believe that was his first. I don't know if that was his first one or if it was "Dust on the Bottle," but one of those two. But they're both great songs. Daryl Singletary at number 50. Although if I was ranking him, he'd probably be in the top 10. That guy was country. "Ain't It the Truth?" If you ever hear that song by Daryl Singletary, "Ain't It the Truth?" that explains it right there. But probably his signature song was "I Let Her Lie." That's a great song. Then we got "Amen Kinda Love." Just great stuff. We're getting some of my favorites now. Ty Herndon next. Man, I loved his voice. "What Mattered Most," "Living in a Moment," Hands of a Working Man, Steam. I could go on all day about Ty Herndon. Brian White, he was known more like the popular type guy. You know, he looked almost like he was like from a boy band or something, but he still had some great country songs. Someone Else's Star. Rebecca Lynn was his first song. That was a great song. He did the duet with Shania Twain, From This Moment On, that later on basically took him out of the song and just put her own version on there. But it works better as a duet, and it's kind of crappy of her to do that to him. I really believe that derailed his career, because he had a pretty good career. Rhett Akins, unfortunately more known today as the father of Thomas Rhett, one of the idiots ruining country music. I'm sorry. But Rhett Akins in the 90s, That Ain't My Truck was probably his signature song. But my favorite of all time came out in 96 was Don't Get Me Started. That song was like all over the number ones, like at my peak listening time to radio. Like I would just sit by the radio and wait for it to come on, you know, when I didn't have a tape and have it recorded. Love that song. Don't get me started. Don't get me started on that song. Leanne Rimes, definitely had a crush on her. She was closer to my age. She was like a couple years older than me, I think. But talk about country. She came out with Blue at like 13 or 14. I can't remember which. Like, how does a 13 or 14-year-old sing like that? Male, female, it doesn't matter. How, and like, just amazing songs. You know, One Way Ticket, Commitment, and some of her later stuff too. Probably Wouldn't Be This Way. I love the duet she did with John Bon Jovi. I guess technically it was Bon Jovi because it's the whole band, but Till We Ain't Strangers Anymore. Love that one. And we've got Trace Adkins. What a great voice, deep voice he has. Every Light in the House is on. Don't Lie. There's a Girl in Texas. Now we've got David Kirsch. Goodnight, Sweetheart. If I Ever Stop Loving You. You know, one of those ones only had a few hits, but still stuck out in my mind. Like I hear it today, and you don't hear it as much. So it's like wow, I ain't heard this forever. You know, turn it up. And Mindy McCready, what a sad story that was. She killed herself. She had a lot of, you know, substance abuse and mental health problems. Just like anytime I think of her, I get sad, and I hate that. Even when her music's playing that I loved, I hate that I'm sad. But I mean, you know, maybe it's, you know, a reminder that, you know, not everybody is, you know, especially people that have had number one hits and good careers, not everybody is, you know, doing great. You know, there's people that are successful that are just, you know, mentally, you know, have horrible lives. And, you know, sorry to bring this podcast down, but like I said, I get sad when I think about her. But her songs, Baby He'll Notice Her Now, the duet she did with Richie McDonald from Lone Star, my all-time favorite. Guys Do It All the Time, 10,000 Angels. I know I'm forgetting one there. A girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. Then we've got Jody Messina, who's recently been, like, you know, getting more popular again because of the I can't even remember who did the weird version of with Heads Carolina, Tails California, but some weird rappy stuff in it. Anyway, obviously that was her signature song, but Bring On the Rain. She had a pretty big like run. I'm All Right. You know, Phil Vassar wrote that one, and I believe another one of her number ones. Just, you know, she had a huge run. Then we've got Mark Wills, great song. Jacob's Ladder, Wish You Were Here. He did a cover of Brian McKnight's Back at One. Just, you know, he had a huge career. Places I'd Never Been. Just great songs. And then Dina Carter, who actually is gonna be with Tracy Bird at the Watermelon Festival. Boy, she came out of the gate with that first album. Did I Shave My Legs for This, which was a funny and good song too. But Strawberry Wine, obviously her signature song, and then How Do I Get There? You Can Count Me In, great songs. Michael Peterson. One of my favorite songs he does is with Travis Tritt, a duet. I don't think it was even a single, but I Finally Passed the Bar, which is kind of like a double thing. Like he's pretending he's like, like a lawyer, take the bar exam, but he's really saying he finally passed the physical bar and didn't go in. It's a funny song. Drink Swears, Steel and Lies is probably his signature song. Leanne Womack, great singer that's like almost a throwback to like the 60s and 70s type of country singers. She had so many great ones. Never Again, I think it was called. Never Again was her, I believe, her first song. And I'll think of a reason later. Obviously, I Hope You Dance is probably her signature song. It was actually a crossover one. Another one that as country as she was, I don't know if it was her or her record company, put out a version where they took out the country instrument, the country instruments. Sorry, this one's going on forever. But we're on 63 now. Gary Allan, his career is more known for the 2000s, but he came out in the 90s with Her Man. That was probably my favorite of his songs. But he came out with some great songs in the 90s. Man to Man, Best I Ever Had. Kevin Sharp, he had, I can't remember what cancer it was. He'd had it for a while and it sadly took his life. But he had, when he came out with that album, he was the top of the charts. Nobody Knows was his signature song, but then he had other stuff like If You Love Somebody and She's Sure Taking It Well. Great stuff there. Shelley Wright came into the later 90s. Single White Female, It Was, just some great music she had. Lila McCann, another one of those ones I had a crush on. She was 16 when she came out, so she was a little older than me too, but kind of close to my age. I Want to Fall in Love. That was, I think, probably her biggest song. I remember I would call in all the time to the radio stations for everything, but they had this their the local countdown of the top 10 every Friday night or something, but people could call in and introduce the song. So I called in and had to she was still new at the time and I hadn't even heard her name, and they're like, it's Lila McCann, and I was trying to say it, I couldn't say it right. McCann, like an Irish pop, can. I always remember that. Of course I knew her name after that. I'm glad they didn't play that part on the radio where he's trying to tell me how to pronounce something. I felt like an idiot. Brad Paisley, obviously more known as 2000s and beyond, but he started in 1999 with his Who Needs Pictures album, which was amazing. That one, and He Didn't Have to Be, but I mean, you can go on and on about his songs. Waiting on a Woman, She's Everything, Old Alabama. I love that song he did with Alabama. Like I said, he came out in the 90s, so I'm counting him on here. But he's was barely at the edge, If he'd have waited 6 months or something, he wouldn't have came out in the 90s. But he's technically a 90s artist. Don't get me started on his freaking guitar playing. Man, it's insane. Chad Brock, who actually used to be a wrestler, just a preliminary guy, was never. I think he was on TV, but it's one of those guys that gets beat in 2 minutes. But great songs he came out with. Ordinary Life, that's my favorite song of his of all time, but I think his signature song is Yes. Sarah Evans, another one that, her popularity didn't really hit to the early 2000s, but the stuff, I think it was 99, she came out with my favorite of hers ever is No Place That Far, the duet with Vince Gill. Whew, that song just hits you. Then we're at 70 now. We've got 5 singles artists left. actually 6. Shania Twain. No, I'm right, 5. Oh, 6. I can't count. Hold on. Let me count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6. Shania Twain. Her first album came out, didn't really do nothing. Then she ended up marrying a record producer, and I'm not saying like, oh, she married a record producer and it got popular, but he really, who ended up cheating on her and ruining her life basically, which really sucks. But I mean, he really, not talking about all that. Just once she came out with that, the Woman in Me album, she came out with first she came out with Who's Better Your Boots Been Under, and it was kind of climbing the charts, but then Any Man of Mine came out and like completely changed the look and feel of women's country music. And then you just had song after song. You Win My Love, Don't Be Stupid, Rock This Country, From This Moment On, You're Still the One, just song after song. And like I said, I hate that she went the popular route, and like she's unrecognizable lately. She's had so much plastic surgery done. It's just people don't care, if your face is old, but when your face is so fake and plastic, it's like it's off-putting. Country fans don't care really. That right there shows me she's trying to go to the popular site. She's always trying to get the pop music. She has a built-in fan base that loved her. But anyway, 71 on here is George Jones, which, because I was thinking, I was like, I gotta put George Jones on this list, and, not just, because he's one of the all-time greatest artists of ever, definitely a top 5, but, I think before I forgot to even mention He Stopped Loving Her Today when I was talking about his music, because I got going on the grand tour. But freaking that song, the greatest country song of all time, He Stopped Loving Her Today. I mean, I would say hands down, but there's a lot of songs in competition for that, but I will always put that as my number 1. Anyway, he had some great songs out in the 90s. The Cold Hard Truth, the ones I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair, that was funny. Choices, that was probably his most personal song, and he put that out like after he'd finally, gotten past all his addictions, and was finally able to stop drinking. I'm so glad he was. The last 15 years or so of his life was like, I'm glad he got to have that sobriety he tried so hard to get throughout his life. Paul Brandt, the song he did, My Heart Has a History. One or two hit wonder, I guess you could say. He was a Canadian artist, but like I said, so I wasn't trying to stretch to fit some of these people on there, but it's just like their songs had such an impact on me. It's like I couldn't leave them off the list. It wasn't me trying to stretch the list, I promise. Lori White, it's Lari. I think it's pronounced Lori. It's the name always throws me off. I want to say it 2 different ways, but anyway, Now I Know. She had a great duet with Travis Tritt, Helping Me Get Over You. By the way, I should do a top duets list sometime. There's so many country duets that were good. I forgot to mention earlier with Ty Herndon, the song with Stephanie Bentley, Heart Half Empty. That's a freaking tearjerker. Radney Foster, Nobody Wins. That was a massive song. One of my favorites of all time of his, probably not heard by a lot, was a Merle Haggard song, The Running Kind, off of the I think it was called Mama Tried, was the name of the album. It was a country tribute to Merle Haggard. Radney Foster did that song. It was the first time I'd heard The Running Kind, which wasn't one of Merle Haggard's like biggest hits. It wasn't a number 1 hit, but I love that song. And then Kathy Mattea, which I'd forgot to mention earlier. That's why it's 75th and last on the singles list. It's just because I was thinking she's more known for her 80s stuff, like 18 Wheels and a Dozen Roses, but her 90s stuff like Walking Away, A Winner. She had some Where Have You Been? Some great songs in the 90s. But that's my singles artist list. Hopefully it didn't take too long. The last part of the list won't take as long, I hope. It's 20 of my favorite country duos, groups, or bands. And I say groups or bands because sometimes in the awards someone call them a band, you know. A lot of them are, you know, bands. I'm pretty sure that everybody on here, you know, everybody plays an instrument, you know, outside of the lead singer, and they usually play instruments anyway. Some of them might have more than one lead singer, but number one, I had to put my favorite group of all time, Alabama. You know, Randy Owen, Teddy Gentry, Jeff Cook, and I'll say it, Mark Herndon on drums. I know that he's not considered technically a part of the band, but I'll always consider him one of the boys in the band. And Alabama, just, I can't say enough about them. There was a 1986 CBS special that was on tape that I finally found on YouTube a few years ago and put on DVD just to have it, but them in concert, I remember seeing that as a kid, and it blew me away. My Home's in Alabama is probably their signature song, and it wasn't even a number one, but where do you go start talking about their songs? Lady Down on Love, Mountain Music, Tennessee River, Why Lady Why, Jukebox in My Mind, I'm in a Hurry. I could just go, but I am probably in a hurry to get done. So, the Kentucky Headhunters, they were a crazy group. They did a cover of the older country song "Walk Softly on This Heart of Mine," but their signature song is probably "Dumas Walker." That song's crazy, but they had some great songs. And the two brothers, I can't remember I think Ricky Phelps was the main guy, the main lead singer, I think. But him and his brother split off into a duo, and I didn't include them on this because they only had one hit that I know of, and I try not to do just one-hit wonders on here, although I'll talk about them here. The brother Phelps, and their song was called Let Go. I love that song. Just wanted to mention that they're with the Kentucky Headhunters, but recently just come back like to popularity, it seems. Shenandoah, they had such great songs. Church on Cumberland Road, Sunday in the South, Ghost in This House, Somewhere in the Vicinity of the Heart that they did with Alison Krauss. That's a great song. Then we got the Oak Ridge Boys, which were obviously more popular in the 70s and 80s, you know, with Elvira and all those, but they still had some great songs in the early 90s, like No Matter How High I Get, American Made, I think was 80s. Like I said, they may have only released one song in the 90s, but I had to include the freaking Oak Ridge Boys. I mean, they are iconic in country music. Sawyer Brown, they won a talent show. I think it was it the, can't remember what that was, To Be a Star or something, I can't remember, but they won a talent show in the 80s, and they did like a cover of one of their first big hits was a cover of the George Jones classic The Race Is On, and they kind of fizzled out, but towards the beginning of the 90s, towards the middle, they like became bigger than ever with like Thank God for You, what was that song? They had so many of them. This Night Won't Last Forever, Drive Me Wild. I'm trying to think of the one. Girls Do, I think. I don't think I've said that one. That might have been their most popular one. But yeah, Mark Miller, the lead singer, he was always dancing everywhere. He's crazy. Brooks and Dunn, in my mind, the greatest duo of all time. I mean, where do you get started with their songs? I mean, we got Ronnie Dunn singing iconic songs like My Maria, Hard Working Man, That Ain't No Way to Go, Neon Moon, Brand New Man, and then Kix Brooks wasn't a slouch either. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. He was lead singer on that, but I mean, he's got you, Lost and Found, Cowgirls Don't Cry. Like with Alabama, you can just keep going on and on and on. McBride and the Ride. The lead singer was Terry McBride, who was actually a co-writer with Ronnie Dunn, or with Kix Brooks, I believe with Ronnie Dunn a little bit too, but on some of their bigger songs. But my favorite McBride and the Ride song was Sacred Ground, and Just One Night was another great song too. They didn't get, weren't as popular outside of a year or two, but one of those songs, one of those bands I always remember. The Judds, like I said, they had to quit touring because Naomi Judd contracted hepatitis and wasn't able to perform anymore, so they had to retire the early 90s. But they came out with Love Can Build a Bridge in the 90s. It's kind of, I think that was their last song, and it kind of did build a bridge to Winona's career. But can't say enough about the Judds. Grandpa Tell Me About the Good Old Days. Why Not Me? They were on fire in the mid to late 80s. Diamond Rio, I've seen them in concert. They are amazing. Mirror Mirror, probably their most well known is Meet in the Middle. They got some great ballads. Mama Don't Forget to Pray for Me. In a Week or Two. You're Gone. In God We Still Trust. Great songs. Little Texas, they the main lead singer was Tim Rushlow, but Brady Seals did a lot of the songs too, and they had some great songs. Obviously, God Bless Texas, their signature. But The First Time for Everything. They were just, I wish they would have stayed together longer. They could have made some really good music. What Might Have Been was a great song too. Confederate Railroad, they were more of like a southern rock influenced country group. Trashy Women, Jesus and Mama Always Loved Me, When You Leave That Way You Can Never Come Back. Great songs. Restless Heart had most of their success in the 80s, but they had, they'd come back in the 90s. So I believe Larry Stewart, their lead singer, had split from them, but then came back. When She Cries is one of their biggest songs ever, and they released that in the 90s. But of course, my favorite of theirs has always been the Bluest Eyes in Texas. Black Hawk, great harmonies. Goodbye Says It All. I Sure Can Smell the Rain. Always Have, Always Will. Like I said, great harmonies, great sound. The Mavericks, they were more like they were like a Cajun influence with Latin music, but all in country. They had Oh What a Thrill, Oh What a Crying Shame. A lot of songs that started with O. But All You Ever Do Is Bring Me Down. That was a funny one. The video for that was hilarious. Boy Howdy. Boy Howdy. That's the name of the group. I'm just saying, Boy Howdy here. Boy Howdy, Jolly Gee Jim, whatever hillbilly hick stuff I'm supposed to say because I listen to country music. No, but the group was named Boy Howdy. Kind of like a two-hit wonder. She'd Give Anything was their number one song, and then They Don't Make Them Like That Anymore was another one. One of those groups that didn't go very far, but you wish would have. Lone Star, that was they're a completely different group these days. Richie McDonald, the lead singer, split from them, came back, but now he's off with Tim Rushlow from Little Texas and Larry Stewart from Restless Heart. They're in a group called the Frontmen, because they're the frontmen of the bands. I'd love to see that show someday. But anyway, Lone Star, obviously number one of all time, is Amazed. But originally, if you're a fan of Big and Rich, which aren't on this list because they didn't come out in the 90s, but John Rich was originally played bass and was part of Lone Star the first two albums. He was gone by the time they'd done Amazed. But anyway, just a little fun fact there. But yeah, that's not the only song. Not a Day Goes By, Tequila Talkin', No News. They had some great songs throughout the 90s and the 2000s. Ricochet. I wish they would have went farther, man. I love the harmonies of Ricochet. What Do I Know? Love Is Stronger Than Pride. I freaking love that group. We got the Dixie Chicks. I know they're polarizing, and they changed their name to the Chicks because apparently the region of Dixie is supposed to be racist now. To me, that's stupid. Yeah. It's, the Confederate flag. I get when people say it's racist. I personally don't have a Confederate flag and never. I'm not from the South, so I wouldn't have a reason to. But the whole I can't say the word Dixie because it's and it's the name of the group, but they're trying to be this woke stuff, and I'm not trying to get into all that, but that ain't the only controversy. Obviously, the talking about the president overseas, which is tame by these days standards, but at the time it was so controversial. But it was during the right after 9/11, and tensions were high, and they were burning and breaking Dixie Chick CDs, I guarantee you. But they had some great music. You get rid of all the controversies and stuff. But the Here's Your Trouble, Cowboy Take Me Away, I Remember When You Were Mine, just their first two albums especially, but and the third album, Home, was really good too. They went more traditional, almost a bluegrassy feel with Traveling Soldier. That was a great song. Montgomery Gentry came in at the very end of the 90s. Eddie Montgomery and Troy Gentry. Eddie was, of course, John Michael Montgomery's little brother. I think it was his little brother, or was it his older brother? I can't remember. Anyway, they came out with Hillbilly Shoes. One of my favorite songs of them of all time is Gone. What was the other one? Cold One Coming On. And they just had great hits into the 2000s. If You Ever Stop Loving Me, Gone, My Town. Sadly, Troy Gentry died in an airplane crash, and Eddie continued with the band, the band that they had, and they did, he kept the name Montgomery Gentry, and his guitar players filled in. I actually seen Eddie at the Swiss Wine Festival, and his guitar players did a really good job of imitating Troy's voice. Not like they were trying to imitate. They sing in the background with him all the time anyway, so they're used to the songs. It's just they put on a great show. Wish Troy could have been there, but it wasn't it didn't feel like it. And I was going into it thinking, I don't know how this is gonna be. It's not Montgomery Gentry. It's just one of them. But I left feeling that was a great show. I didn't feel obviously Troy's not there, and you know what I'm trying to say. But the last one to make the list is a more poppier one, but they still had some good songs. It was Shadazy. I think one of their best songs is Come Home Soon. It was about soldiers, and it came out after 9/11, so it really hit that nerve. But some of their stuff that they came out with, Little Goodbyes, just some great stuff. But that is my list of the 95 of my favorite country artists and groups and duos and stuff. I hope this one probably took a lot of time, but I tried to get through them quickly, not because I wanted to gloss over, but just for time reasons. Check out all of them. If you've never heard any of them before, check them out. If you have, maybe it'll bring you some memories and you want to go back and look them up. This is, like I said, this is the bonus episode for April. May's bonus episode, I'm actually going to go I'm going to go back to my top 50 list. I'm going to rank, and it's going to be the top 50 Saturday morning cartoons and shows. I had to put shows because obviously I include in there stuff like the Power Rangers. That's not a cartoon, but it was a Saturday morning show. But I always call them Saturday morning cartoons. Everybody does, The stuff like Batman animated series. I'm just going to take stuff that was I believe I'm just going to do the 90s. Try to stick with the 90s theme here. If the show started before the 90s, that's fine. As long as it was on in the 90s, I'm going to, go through the list of stuff and make a top 50. I'm not, some of these, I know what my number one's going to be. I'm not actually sure what my number one's going to be for this one. I'm not even exactly sure what the top 10's going to be. But I will, like I said, that'll be next month. Make sure you keep watching the regular podcast and all my bonus stuff that comes out. This is supposed to come out, hopefully it does, on April 15th. So that'll be a Tuesday. So that means if you're watching this the day it comes out, make sure you watch tomorrow for Tales from the 90s. But thank you for joining us. I hope you guys brought back some memories of some of the great artists from the 90s. And, maybe I'll do one for the 80s and the 2000s another time or something. Or maybe not. I don't know. I've talked a lot about, some of my favorites, just a lot of good memories here. And I'm probably going to go listen to some of these songs now. Thank you guys so much for joining me. You guys continue supporting my channel, whether it's, here on Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify. So, thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time.